It's not an obligation. It's not a chore. We have been invited into a very personal, a very real relationship with a God that created us on purpose for a purpose.
What tips do you have for refocusing on God's goodness throughout just how full the days can be? It's like, oh my goodness, it's like the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. And so what kind of works for you?
Yeah, so I've gone through like different processes of doing that and like seasons of faith, right? Sometimes I'm like more on it and sometimes I'm just kind of like, meh. But what I found really helpful is that I start the day in the Bible. So you don't have to be like me, but I wake up ridiculously early because I have two small kids and they require me, and that's good. But I also require to be deeply rooted in my foundation before I start the day. And so I've been, for the last like 3 years, I've been waking up around 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning to get into the word and to just start that process. And like I also pray in the morning and I hit my knees on the ground and I just surrender the day to God and I just ask for his will to be done in my life today. And just to give me the right tools at the right time to deal with whatever it is that may come up. And and so I start with prayer and I start with the Bible. And then throughout the day, I found it helpful to um, like pray throughout the day. Like sometimes if I'm doing laundry, I'll just take that time and like that as a cue to pray or just to spend time with God. And when we talk about prayer, it doesn't have to be like, Our Father in heaven, hallowed be thy name. But like, hey, God, like this is what's going on. Or, can you be with so and so? Like, I know that they've been struggling with this, or just thank you for this person, this relationship, this life, like just giving that thanks to God. And something that I've recently started to do is in the car with the kids when we're driving around doing things or going to school, I pray openly and, like bring all of those prayer requests that I get from friends or family or acquaintances, I bring it out into the open, like within reason. I'm not going to divulge really, you know, to my kids. But I got it on my heart that it's like, you know what? Like, I didn't see that a lot growing up. Like, we went to church, we did the things, but I didn't really see a lot of that, like, open faith of like, hey, this is how it's done. So when I started to struggle, I didn't know how to pray. I didn't know how to spend time in the word. So I find it's very important, like now in my relationship with God, to really like display that for my kids so that they can see what it's like and see what it's like to walk in obedience and just to always have that God consciousness of being willing and aware and open to having that conversation with God and pursuing right relationship. Because I just feel like at some point they're going to leave this house and they have to make the decision: Am I a Christian or am I not a Christian? And how do I do this Christian thing anyway? And so it's up to me to be that example and show them the way so that when they do leave, by God's grace, they will continue.
Mm. I have also found that I need to be reminded throughout the day. And I love the idea of the daily office. I don't know if you've practiced that. This was a newer concept to me. Have you heard of it?
No.
It's probably, I'll have to like find out, where was I reading about this? I'm trying to remember what book I read about it in. I believe it's like a very old tradition. It goes back a very long time, but it's just, I had never been taught about it. But kind of like what you're saying, where you're checking in and you're praying, it's the idea of like 3 to 4 times a day. There's regular points in time where there's this reconnection with the Lord, just again, knowing that the day gets busy and full and we just start like, can drop his hand and just kind of be going about the day. And so I found that to be really helpful. I find it particularly helpful doing this kind of work, but I can see it being incredibly helpful no matter what someone's doing for their vocation. And it helps me just like refocus back on, okay, like, yes, the Lord is good and the Lord is faithful and the Lord is here, and I want to continue to remain in communication with him throughout the day, remember his presence throughout the day, as well as my husband recently started asking us a series of questions at the dinner table, which has been really fun. Like he'll ask, like, what was our kind of our favorite part of the day, highlight of our day? What was the toughest part of our day? Whether we just didn't like it as much or it was difficult, whatever it may be. And then what's something that we're really feeling grateful for when we look back at our day. And that obviously reflecting on what was tough, that leading into what we're grateful for. It's just a really good series of questions that I've been appreciating. And even my 6-year-old is answering them. He's thinking about it. And it was really sweet, y'all, with kids. This is how quickly they pick up on stuff. My husband had only done this like 3 to 4 nights in a row. And already he had to go to work one night. And so my son and I went out to eat. So I took him out to Chick-fil-A and we got Chick-fil-A. And we're sitting there eating and we're just kind of hanging out. And he leans over and he's like, Mama, what was your favorite part of the day? And so then he was, little man, like leading the conversation and asking the questions, and kind of like headed up leading us through the questions. Not that the boy has to do it or the male has to do it. I'm not inferring that. It was just really sweet to see him like picking up like in his papa's footsteps because Papa was at work. And so that was a really good moment. It was a good just kind of reminder of how they're watching and the, influence and impact we can have and how quickly we can actually have it. Again, this was a very new rhythm. And so very easily he could have just totally forgotten and I could have totally forgotten, but he didn't. And he brought it up. But it's a really great way to start to kind of wind down the day. I mean, if you've got older kiddos who aren't going to bed as soon, but by the time we have dinner, we're starting bedtime like within 45 minutes to an hour after that with like bath and everything. And so it's a really great way to kind of refocus on the gratitude aspect and not in a way where, again, we're disregarding that there's tough stuff. It's like, no, we're going to also acknowledge that there's tough stuff. We're going to turn toward the tough stuff. We're going to move through the tough stuff. We're also going to recognize God's goodness through the tough stuff and just the really good stuff. So it's just kind of bringing it all together without having a disregard for one side or the other.
Well,
anything you'd add to that? Go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry. In the long run too, like you're teaching your son, you and your husband are teaching your son how to like self-evaluate, which is something that I feel is so important too. Like if I don't know how to like look at my day, like what went well, what didn't go well, like take that inventory, then there's a lot of things that can just kind of get hidden under the surface that we'll never know that we need to even deal with. But to like learn that life skill of being able to like look at the day, look at what's gone on, like reevaluate everything and work through what needs to be worked through. And yeah, at dinner time, we have the same kind of idea with, we do a devotion with the kids and then there's some questions throughout the devotion. And so like bringing it all together at the end of the day. And we didn't start out doing that. We just like more recently within the last year started doing it because I heard one of my other mom friends was doing it. I'm like, hey, like, yeah, that's like a really good point that we should really bring it back at the end of the day and do some devotion time and just like kind of go through what happened in the day too. And one thing I did forget to mention is that at night when I go to bed, my knees hit the floor again. I start and end the day on my knees on the floor, like just praying and thanking God for the day, thanking Him for what went well. And again, doing that personal inventory. If things didn't go well, if somebody rubbed me the wrong way or I'm carrying some sort of resentment, I bring that to God. And then if I have to go and make an apology or an amends later, then I need to do that. So just being willing really to dig into a type of lifestyle that allows us to be able to live freely in this world. And I just think it's a beautiful gift. And like even spending time in the Word or spending time in prayer with God, it's not an obligation. It's not a chore. We have been invited into a very personal, a very real relationship with the God that created us on purpose for a purpose. And that is something to be like mindful of and just to be able to resonate in. And it doesn't have to be structured. It doesn't have to be fully routined, but it's just like a heart posture of, thank you, God. Thank you for this day. Thank you that I get to be in relationship with you and learning how to have that gratitude. But also like God can handle our emotions. I have spent many a day driving down the highway in my car, literally screaming my face off at God as I wrestled through really hard seasons in my Christian walk. And God is not offended by that. God is not like, oh, gross, Melanie, like chill out. He is not like that, like He weeps with us. He grieves with us. He laughs with us. He enjoys doing life with us and being in that relationship. And what a gift that is that we get to enter into that relationship, every single one of us.